I became pregnant while already being pregnant by two different men. After years in a stable relationship with Pedro, my longtime boyfriend, I received the news that would change everything. I was pregnant. It was supposed to be a moment of pure happiness, but I soon realized that joy would give way to a whirlwind of secrets and twists. Days after discovering my pregnancy, I ran into Rafael, a love from my past, and it was a shock. The chemistry between us was still undeniable, and in a moment of impulsiveness, I let my unresolved feelings take over. What I couldn't foresee was that this night of passion would change my life once again. I discovered I was pregnant again, but this time, Rafael was the father. Now my situation was beyond anything I could imagine. Medical consultations revealed a rare condition. I was pregnant by two men at the same time, each of them the father of one of the babies. What to do? The pressure mounted every day, and I found myself torn between Pedro, with whom I had always dreamed of building a life, and Rafael, who had brought back feelings I thought I had buried. With each moment, the weight of the secret became unbearable, and the looming threat of a catastrophic revelation hung over me like a dark cloud. My vulnerability became evident. How could I deal with the guilt and responsibility of two lives now depending on me? Caught between love, betrayal, and impossible choices, I found myself in a deep moral dilemma. Doubt consumed me. What is more important, loyalty or the heart? The answer didn't seem clear, and the pressure to keep this secret only grew. As each day passed, the lines between love and loyalty became more blurred. I knew that, in the end, I would have to make a decision that would change not only my life, but also the lives of everyone I loved. Now, more than ever, I needed to figure out what future I wanted for my family and how I would face the consequences of my choices. The following weeks were a true whirlwind. With each medical appointment, each ultrasound, I felt more lost in a maze of emotions. The images of the two little ones forming inside me were both wonderful and terrifying. How could I be the mother they needed when I didn't even know what to do? The weight of responsibility became unbearable, and guilt followed me like a persistent shadow. What troubled me the most was the idea of having to tell Pedro. He had always been my safe harbor, the man who supported me in everything. I knew that by telling the truth, I would not only be destroying our dream, but also hurting a heart that trusted me. The image of him, surprised and hurt, haunted me during sleepless nights. I spent hours thinking about how he would react, and every time I imagined it, my stomach twisted. Rafael, on the other hand, seemed to be the temporary solution to my anguish. He was always around, willing to listen and support me. His presence made me feel alive and desired in a way I hadn't felt in years. But at the same time, the guilt of being with him consumed me. I knew I had betrayed Pedro, and the thought of repeating that mistake with Rafael left me conflicted. What did I really want? The security of Pedro or the overwhelming passion that Rafael provided? Meanwhile, time was running out, and the pressure was mounting. People around me began to notice that something was off. My friends, always so attentive, started to worry about my emotional state. Clara, one of my best friends, did not hesitate to confront me. "Mariana, you don't seem like yourself. What's going on?" I wanted to open my heart to her, but the fear of judgment and the confusion I felt held me back. I was forced to make up excuses and hide the truth, which only increased my loneliness. Days turned into weeks, and the approach of my birthday brought a new wave of pressure. It was a moment that should have been celebratory, but the idea of having to choose between Pedro and Rafael terrified me. What did I want for myself? What did I want for my children? The questions multiplied in my mind, and I feared that any answer I found could be the wrong one. Finally, one dark night, after a heated discussion with Pedro about future plans, I decided I needed some time alone. I went to the small beach where we used to spend weekends. The sound of the waves crashing on the sand always had a calming effect on me, but that night, even the sea couldn't bring peace to my heart. As I walked along the sand, tears streamed down my face. There, alone, I finally allowed myself to feel the pain and confusion that were consuming me. It was then that I heard a familiar sound. Rafael appeared, as if he had read my thoughts. He approached, and even with a heavy heart, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief at not being alone anymore. We talked about everything, about life, about our feelings. With each word, each nervous laugh, I felt more drawn to him. But at the same time, the guilt of being there, in that moment, was eating me alive. "Mariana, I just want you to be happy," he said, looking into my eyes. "No matter what happens, I'll be by your side." And those words, though comforting, left me even more confused. I didn't know what it meant to be happy. Did being happy mean being with Rafael and risking my future with Pedro? Or did it mean maintaining the life I had built with someone who had always been there for me, even if it meant giving up something that could be special? Over time, I realized that this decision involved not just the two men, but also the kind of mother and woman I wanted to be. I was standing at an emotional precipice, and the only thing I knew was that I needed to decide. The pressure increased, and with it, new complications arose. Pedro started to suspect something, and the conversations with Clara became more frequent, while Rafael tried to understand my confused feelings. The nights were no longer peaceful. I dreamed of both of them and woke up anxious, not knowing which path to take. The weight of the responsibility of being a mother, being faithful to someone, and at the same time, being true to myself felt unbearable. With each passing day, I felt like I was about to explode, and I knew the moment of truth was approaching. The journey to find what I truly wanted was just beginning, and the path would be filled with challenges. I would have to face not only the feelings of the men involved, but also my own fears and insecurities. The only certainty I had was that, regardless of how this story ended, I needed to be true to myself and to the lives that now depended on me. That night on the beach, while talking to Rafael, I was overcome by a momentary sense of clarity. The waves of the sea, with their ebb and flow, seemed to reflect the turmoil I felt inside. But when Rafael held my hand, a wave of comfort enveloped me, and for a brief moment I thought that maybe everything could be resolved. However, this illusion of safety was abruptly interrupted by a phone call that would change everything. The ring of my cell phone echoed on the fine sand, and as I looked at the screen, my heart raced. It was Pedro. Fear consumed me, but not knowing what to do, I answered. His voice on the other end was filled with concern. He said he had something important to tell me. My stomach churned. The uncertainty of what he would say put me on high alert. "Mariana, I don't know how to say this, but you need to know that my mother is very ill. She has been hospitalized and is not responding well to treatment." His words sounded like thunder. My world, which was already so unstable, collapsed once again. The pain and worry for what Pedro and his family were going through expanded my heart. I wanted to be by his side, to offer support, but the weight of guilt for being there with Rafael was unbearable. I felt like I was about to be engulfed by a wave of emotions I couldn't control. "I'm going to the hospital now," Pedro continued, his voice choked. "If you can, I would like you to be with me." At that moment, I realized I could no longer hide. The truth, which I had always tried to avoid, was about to be revealed, and there was no escaping it. Saying a quick goodbye to Rafael, a sense of urgency took hold of me. I needed to go to Pedro, not just as his girlfriend, but as someone who cared deeply. The journey to the hospital was a mix of anxiety and despair. I thought about what could happen if Pedro found out about my involvement with Rafael. At the same time, my heart broke at the thought of the pain he was feeling because of his mother. As soon as I arrived, I found Pedro in a corridor, pale and worried. He hugged me tightly, as if seeking an anchor in the midst of a storm. Seeing his fragility tightened my heart. This moment was not about me, but about the pain he was facing. What I was going through felt so small compared to what was at stake. As the hours passed, we sat together in the waiting room, and I could see the internal struggle he was facing. With every look we exchanged, guilt consumed me. I was not being the partner he deserved, and at the same time, I knew that life was forcing me to confront the reality I had tried to avoid. Pedro did not deserve to be hurt in any way, but I also did not want to live a lie. After what felt like hours, the doctor finally appeared. Her expression was serious. The news was not good. Pedro's mother's treatment was not working as they had hoped, and the chances of recovery were slim. Despair took over us, and I realized that, at that moment, all that mattered was being by his side. As he said goodbye to his mother, I found myself reflecting on my own choices. This situation forced me to confront the reality of my life and the paths I had chosen. I could no longer live in a maze of emotions. I needed to be honest, not only with Pedro but with myself. I had to choose what I truly wanted, without any more escapism. In that moment of pain, I realized I could no longer continue with the illusion of a double life. The love I felt for Pedro and the passion I had for Rafael could not coexist in the same space. The truth was that, by getting involved with Rafael, I had drifted away from who I truly was and what I genuinely wanted. More importantly, by ignoring this truth, I had hurt not only myself but also Pedro. The weight of the decision was piling up, and I knew I had to face it once and for all. What I desired was peace, sincerity, and the ability to be the mother my children needed. From that moment on, I was determined to pursue that truth, no matter how painful it might be. The road ahead would be difficult, but I was ready to face the consequences. It was time to start over. The hours I spent by Pedro's side in the hospital were a test for me. As he said goodbye to his mother, I felt life pushing me toward an abyss of decisions. Every tear that streamed down his face felt like a drop of pain that I needed to absorb, not just to comfort him, but to understand the depth of the reality we were facing. I was there to support him, but also to confront my own feelings. That moment brought all my insecurities to the surface. I had always been someone who ran away from difficulties, who hid behind relationships and distractions. However, seeing Pedro so vulnerable made me realize that I could no longer take refuge in illusions. Life was asking me for courage, and I was finally willing to listen to it. When the doctor brought the worst news, a wave of despair washed over me. I had to be strong, not just for myself, but for Pedro. This strength, however, was not something I naturally possessed. It was something I needed to cultivate within myself. I remembered moments when I had hesitated, allowing situations to control me. From now on, I wanted to be the master of my destiny. In the silence of the hospital, as the night stretched on, Pedro's pain became almost palpable. I felt as if I were trapped in a storm, struggling to find a point of anchorage. The decisive moment came when, amidst tears, he looked at me with a despair I had never seen before. "What am I going to do now?" His voice trembled, and I realized he wasn't just asking about the loss of his mother, but about the future, about everything. My heart raced. I could succumb to my own insecurity, let fear paralyze me, or I could be the strength he needed. I took a deep breath, trying to gather all the broken pieces of myself. I couldn't leave him alone in this abyss. So with all the sincerity I could muster, I declared, "Pedro, I don't know what the future holds for us, but I won't let you go through this alone. We're together, even when everything seems to crumble." From that moment on, I decided that the mistakes I had made would not define me. I would choose to learn from them. It wouldn't be easy, but I was willing to face this journey of self-discovery. The friendships I had and the new ones that could emerge would help me along the way. During Pedro's moments of sadness, I realized that I also had friends who cared, who would be willing to support me when I needed it. Life taught me that true success does not lie in accumulating wealth or being admired, but in finding meaning in the relationships we build and the experiences we live. I wanted to be someone who contributes to the happiness of others, someone who, instead of hiding, exposes themselves and faces challenges head-on. As the days passed, I realized that my decision to stand by Pedro not only helped him, but also transformed me. Every conversation we had brought a little more light to his shadows, and at the same time, I was learning to deal with my own fears. The pain of losing his mother was still present, but together we found ways to honor her memory, celebrating the life she lived. What once seemed like an abyss was now becoming a path. I learned that true strength comes from connection, friendship, and the love we share. This journey not only united us, but also showed us that we can rebuild our lives, even after the greatest storms. If you are going through difficult times, remember, you don't have to face it alone. Watch the video that appears on your screen now. Share your experiences in the comments and join us in this search for strength and hope. Like and subscribe to receive more inspiring stories that offer support in challenging times. Together, let's find light in the darkness.